Hello fellow D&D adventurers, why don't you take a seat and join us for today's Dungeons & Dragons horror story. This is Ryan from D&D Awakening and this is how a player uses D&D to cheat on his girlfriend. The story is very long and I'm very sorry. This is one that happened a few years ago but still gets brought up semi-regularly with colleagues and friends, so I thought I'd share it here. The cast, me the DM, Jay the individual in question, Rob the veteran player, Becky the other woman, Tyler another player, Kevin my former manager, and Kate the girlfriend. Names have been changed. I'd been DMing for a few years and a few of my colleagues at work wanted to give playing D&D 5-year go. One of my close work friends had been playing since 3rd edition and wanted to check out the changes to the game, so we rounded up a group of people who seemed interested. The group initially consisted of Rob, the veteran player, Kevin, our old manager, someone from a different department in the workplace, and Jay, the one responsible for this whole story. Since I was just trying to gauge interest in playing, I ran the sunken sigil from Tales from the Yawning Portal. At first, everything was going well. The players were getting along, they were coming up with ingenious plans to get around obstacles, and generally having a good time. The only thing that sticks out to me as close to being a problem with Jay was that he used the cantrip he got from being a high elf to cast prestidigitation on party members' trousers as they slept, so it would look like they had wet their pants. Childish, yes, but not overly malicious, and the other players found it funny. Now, when we played, we would take it in turns to host and cycle between our houses. Whoever hosted would provide food, and we'd usually play from about half an hour after we finished work until around about 11 PM. Whenever we would play at Jay's house, his girlfriend Kate would seem interested in what we were doing and would like to listen in and ask questions sometimes. We were all pretty friendly with her since she also worked with us, so I invited her to play. I said I could work in a way for her character to join the party, but she declined and said it's not her thing. Fair enough. After we finished Sunken Sigil, Rob wanted to have a go at Forge of Fury, as he ran that in a past edition and wanted to see how it compared. Unfortunately, our other colleague that we were playing with found a new job elsewhere and worked a different schedule to us, so he had to drop out of the group. Forge of Fury with 3 party members is doable, but not at the level they were at in the game. I again asked Kate would you like to join, but Jay said she didn't want to. So I suggested we do a bit of a homebrew until the group found some more members. Long story short, they loved the homebrew so much they just wanted to play that from then on. Around that time, Tyler had joined my department at work and heard myself, Rob and Kevin talking about D&D and asked if he could join. We agreed and he started playing with us. After Tyler joined, however, Jay took a bit of a strange turn in how he played. In game, he would regularly go against what the party had agreed on, robbing tombs, etc. and would play up to his prankster persona and antagonise Tyler's character. Out of game was even worse. He just started going to a new church with Kevin, and whenever it wasn't their turn in the game, they would do nothing but talk about it. I don't mind church talk, but not when we were supposed to be playing. It got to the point where Rob ended up snapping at them about how it was ruining their experience. Coupled with the attending of the new church, Jay also stopped hosting sessions at his house, which a few of the groups saw as unfair since we all took it in turns hosting and providing food, and he was not. To keep the peace, I changed the location of our games to a local gaming club that served food and we all paid for our own meals. After a few sessions, Jay approached me and said that someone from his church was interested in giving playing a go. I don't like disappointing people, but didn't want to add someone new into the campaign that might not stick around, so I suggested a one-shot, 1 week that they could play. He said that sounded like a good idea. The week of the one-shot was when most of us met Becky. Kevin already knew her from the church, but for the rest of us, it was our first time. She was really nice and fit in with the group well, so we invited her to join the campaign. It was homebrew anyway, so I could adjust as needed. The only thing that struck me as a bit odd was that Jay and Becky would take pretty regular cigarette breaks together, whereas before, Jay wouldn't smoke that often, but I just brushed that off as social smoking. As time goes on, however, things got weirder and weirder. One day after work, Tyler ends up giving Kate a ride home. She can't drive and Jay had a meeting. and after that Jay ended up acting really off. The next session, outside of role-playing the game, he doesn't talk to Tyler at all, let alone look at him. I sense the animosity, and after the game is over, I talk to each of them to ask what's up. Tyler has no idea, just that Jay's been weird since he drove Kate home. I ask if anything happened in the drive, and he says no, it was barely 10 minutes and all they spoke about was how D&D was going. I then spoke to Jay and asked if anything had happened with Tyler. He said no, he didn't have any problems with Tyler. He just didn't like that he drove his girlfriend home, but he was over it. This just didn't sit right with me as his reaction seemed a bit severe, so I decided to keep an eye on the situation. At the end of the day, we were playing for fun and to unwind, and any animosity or issues that ran contrary to that would ruin the experience for everyone. The next session, Jay was back talking to Tyler, and all seemed fine. However, in-game it was another story. He kept trying to antagonise Tyler's character and repeatedly tried to initiate PvP, which I'd established in session 0 wouldn't be allowed. The good news was that Tyler's character was built like an absolute unit and Jay could barely touch him, so the first time it was tried, Tyler simply ignored it. After that, I shut down every attempt, and after the game I took Jay aside and reminded him that what he did wasn't allowed. Everyone was there to have a good time, and by doing what he did, he was affecting everyone's experience. He apologised and said he wouldn't do it again. The next session, both him and Becky were more than an hour late and ended up showing up at the same time. They said they were both doing something for the church, but Kevin had been on time, not to mention we all came straight from work, so that didn't seem right to me again. I elected to talk to Jay after the session, but once it was over he hurried off, so I didn't have a chance. At work the next day I bumped into Kate, so I decided to ask her if it was alright. He'd been a bit off recently and him and Becky had both been late. Kate, oh, Becky's playing? Me? Yeah, from church. Scoffing, Kate, not my church, I don't go there. The pastor says they need to try and convert as many people as possible, and that really put me off. I again get a weird feeling, maybe they're in a cult? That would explain the weird behaviour and changing attitude. Kate, that's weird he was late though, he really loves playing. I guess you all do though, since the games are now going on till later. Me? What do you mean? They still finish at 11. Kate, oh? Do they? Sorry, I need to go. After that, she left pretty quickly. Needless to say, I easily connected the dots. For the rest of the week, Jay was really off with everyone at work and wouldn't speak to anyone. Friday came and after work he vanished without waiting to drive home with Kate. No one knew where he was and his phone was off. Tyler ended up driving Kate home again and later that night filled me in on what she had told him. It wasn't pretty. When we had started playing D&D, Kate had wanted to join in, but Jay had told her she wasn't allowed to because it was his thing. He had stopped hosting because he wanted to exclude her, and it was easier to do when she wasn't asking us questions. After that, when he joined the church and met Becky, he had started to compare Kate to her to make her feel bad. She said she didn't like him hanging around with Becky outside of church and thought after that it was over. On the nights we played D&D, he started coming home at 1 AM and explained it was that the sessions were now running longer. After talking with me, however, Kate realised that he was probably with Becky. It also turned out that Jay had told Kate that we started playing twice a week, but we only ever played once, so it was likely he was with Becky those times as well. Kate thought the reason Jay was angry with Tyler was because he was scared he'd let something slip on the first car ride. It also transpired that Kevin knew about the whole thing. The weekend goes by and no one is able to get hold of Jay. He resurfaces though Monday morning. The next part I don't know for certain, but I'm inclined to believe because of how he's acted before. Apparently, after he got home, he didn't say a word to Kate at all and ignored her almost completely. He still drove her to work but was silent the whole time. However, after they walked through the doors into the building, he started acting like nothing was wrong. This continued for a few days, with him apparently only acknowledging her while at work. It culminated with Kate breaking down crying in front of a number of colleagues in her office. This part unfortunately I was there for and it was awful. The day of our normal D&D session came about that week, but I didn't have it in me to run it. Rob agreed with my decision, so I messaged the group to tell them it was cancelled. Later that night, while I was at home with my wife, at the time girlfriend, I got a text from Kate asking if Jay was playing D&D. I told her I'd cancelled the game. Following that, I decided to stop running D&D games for the people at work. I couldn't excuse Jay's behaviour and felt wrong knowing that he'd used my games as a cover for what he was doing. I also couldn't forgive Kevin for being complicit in this. I still played board games with Rob and Tyler after that, but never scheduled. Kate ended up joining us for a few games every now and then, and after a while elaborated on what had actually happened. It's not a good story and not one I'd like to share here. As may have been implied by some of the early details about his personality, there was more going on than what we actually knew. Jay ended up getting a job elsewhere and moving, but took most of the stuff from his and Kate's house. From social media, I know that he still sees Becky, but they're not together, as she is apparently engaged to someone else. Rob and I also stopped trusting Kevin, but he also got a new job and we haven't seen him since. I still play D&D, but only with my friends from outside of work, and after several years I've only just started playing as a DM again. It was tough dealing with personal issues surrounding games, and as the person running them, it took a bit of a toll on my mental health as well. TLDR, player banned his girlfriend from playing, then invites someone to join our gaming sessions. It transpires he's been using our games as excuses for why he's not home till late, and he's been cheating on his girlfriend with the new player. So everyone, what do you think of that story? Why don't you comment below and let me know. If you've not already done so, why don't you smash that like button if you've got this far? And if you've not already done so, why don't you hit that subscribe button, click that bell icon to be notified every time I upload a new video. Well, until the next D&D horror story, take care, and I'll see you soon.